You don't deserve this land. He said it with his heel hooked on my bottom wire. Sun pressed warm on the back of my neck. The creek carried that iron smell it gets before rain, and a hawk made a slow coin in the sky. He flicked rust from a staple and let the word family ride his tongue like a deed stamp. Must be nice, Cody added, living off what other men built. I took off one glove, tipped my hat, and let silence do the first measuring. After a lifetime as a county surveyor, I can feel a crooked sentence the way I feel a leaning post. This one leaned hard. Afternoon, I said. He smiled without humor. We'll be moving those lines next week. Leave the gate unlocked to save us time. We? Family, he said, and made it sound permanent. You're just a placeholder, Uncle. Everybody knows it. He isn't my blood. He came with a marriage and a set of holidays crowded with names. Over time, people start fitting. The fit can be used. I let the wind hum through the wire and heard my father in it, one staple at the top, two in the middle, one at the bottom. True is true, even if nobody looks, he used to say, palming the last post like a book he swore by. Cody kicked off the wire and walked back to his truck, music up too loud for pasture. When the dust settled, I walked the line. 22 paces to the low spot, 7 to the cottonwood stump. At the northeast corner, I brushed grass from the capped rebar. The stamp winked like a coin you don't spend. Monuments, not memory, hold. After my father's funeral, casseroles and sentences filled the house. We'll help however we can, folks said. No rush. A few head grazed my east pasture, just for a month. Grief shortens months. Keys passed hand to hand, and the word borrow softened into we're family. Taxes arrived in envelopes that looked like trouble even when they weren't. I paid them because paper is how I keep promises to the dead. I took the shoebox from the cupboard that night and laid out the record of my stubbornness. Receipts, plats, surveys, penciled maps. Ink is a kind of oath. On a yellow pad, I wrote 3 lines: monuments, control over fence, taxes paid by me, permissive use is not adverse claim, and a 4th, find the note. Cody had tried a remarking the year before with orange tape and confidence. He cut wire at the low spot and pounded new stakes like color could move clay. I'd met him with the old survey, a compass, and a thermos. I put my palm to the post until my pulse took the wire's faint music. Left irritated. That taught me something. He respects what he can't perform around. I brewed enamel-strong coffee and opened the county site, typed parcel numbers like scripture, printed maps, and stacked them square. There's a sound paper makes when it aligns that soft settling like a gate finding its latch. It steadied me more than anger ever could. In the morning, the courthouse smelled like varnish and old arguments. Light tilted through tall windows and made dust look ceremonial. The clerk who has known me since my last name was always followed by son of slid copies across the counter. Back again, Mr. Denner? Brushing dirt off what's already there. Oh. On a bench under an 1,898 map, I matched corners to descriptions SE quarter of the NE quarter. Section 12, Township 8, Range 14. An old song. My signature sat on a decade-old deed like a nail set right. Outside, the flag talked in the wind. At the bank, I asked whether the ransom note was held in-house or serviced out. Polite towns give polite men generalities with gaps. You don't plug gaps with volume, you fill them with patience. I left a card and a quiet intention. Back home, I stood on the porch and watched the creek bend like an elbow resting. A fence is order. Justice is wire singing the note the land recognizes, and the paper that says you stretched it where the monuments say, the plan was simple the way a good knot is simple. Only if you've tied it often. Keep paying taxes. Document use. Ask for letters without adjectives. If the bank ever wanted to sell the note on Cody's house, be the man with ready cash and a still face. At dusk, I walked the fence again, glove on one hand, bare palm on the wire. I like to feel its honesty. A crushed beer can turn up under grass left from a bragging afternoon. I pocketed it. Litter belongs with you until you can throw it out clean. His truck rolled by, music loud, threat thin. He didn't stop. Bullies like motion. I pictured him practicing a speech for folks. My name hollow in his mouth, the line moving in his head like ribbon on a breeze. That was fine. My name had work to do in courthouses and on letterhead. I dialed a number I trust. Raleigh and Tate, she answered. Evening, Nora. I need a letter, maybe 2. Rain on tin roof letters. Polite, steady, impossible to ignore. Boundaries again? Boundaries. Bring your shoebox in the morning. I set the receiver down and studied my reflection in the dark window. My face looks like my father's did the year he stopped wearing his hat. Same mouth that says I'm done explaining but not done. I turned off the porch light so the moth beating the screen could find its way back to honest night. Some boundaries you respect by switching the light off, some by switching it on. I slept to the fence's low hum, counting ties the way some men count sheep. At dawn, the plan would begin in ink and steady hands, and by sundown, my name would start appearing in places Cody never bothered to look. Morning came clean and metallic. I put the shoebox on the passenger seat and drove to town without the radio. Raleigh and Tate sits over the hardware store, stares that remember every boot. Nora met me with a pencil behind her ear, and the kind of look that has already read the ending. Coffee? Already pledged, I said, setting the box on her table. Lemon oil, old paper, quiet. Tell me what I need to say. That the line is where the monuments say, taxes paid by me every year. Use permissive, never hostile. Anyone cutting my wire is cutting into proof. We emptied the box. She sorted with a librarian's precision deeds, surveys, tax receipts, photographs. We'll send certified letters to adjacent owners and to the recorder, she said, already writing. Her pen made the sound I like, thought turning to shape. The letter was spare and exact legal description. Survey dates, images to follow, one paragraph reminding recipients that tape and enthusiasm do not move boundaries. No adjectives. Just wait. Certified, return receipt, please. She slid a tray for my copies. Keep the green cards, little affidavits with stamps. At the post office, I watched each stamp seat like a rivet. I mailed the photographs I'd taken at dawn-capped rebar, posts, low spot, cottonwood stump with a ruler and compass in frame so a stranger could swear to scale. I drove home by the long road and counted gates I had repaired in this county, a quiet ledger of hinges that still obeyed. Back at the kitchen table, I made a landing strip for the weather to come. Top left for receipts, top right for green cards, bottom for maps. I labeled with pencil because pencil tells the truth about corrections. I printed fresh maps and traced bearings. N 89 degrees 5610 E, 1,320.11 feet. Numbers with backbone. Walking the fence after lunch, I relearned the pasture by touch glove on right hand, bare left palm on the wire. When I tightened a tie, crushed sage rose from my glove. Memory offered August, my father and me under a white sky. Twist, check, twist again, he said at the brace. Stop when it sings. He plucked the wire until the note moved from thin to true. That note has been my metronome ever since. The bank called around 3. Following up, the manager said, the note you asked about is serviced out of Wichita. Public filings? Float easy, Mr. Danner. Thank you. I wrote Wichita Servicer on my pad and underlined it once. Then I added, patience is leverage. Evening shouldered up with a west cloud and the smell that says dust is about to learn manners. I tied the shoebox with baling twine and locked it in the truck because I like the sound of latches doing what they're told. A deer lifted from the creek and decided I was not a question. At the east gate, I found a fresh boot print. New tread, long stride, eager. I didn't feel anger. I felt alignment. Tomorrow, the letters would land. The recorder would initial what needed initialing. The green cards would start their round trips. The monuments would keep their little crowns of grass. My name would begin appearing where it belonged. Inside, I sharpened 2 pencils and wrote a list. First light walk line, photograph corners, clerk's office pull adjacent deeds, call Wichita Servicer, buy coffee for the copy desk, print maps, label envelopes. Under the list, I wrote a sentence that steadies my hands. True is true, even if nobody looks. Night set up its arithmetic, crickets counted. I lay awake listening to the fences hum, deeper after dark, like a cello agreeing with a burden. Sleep brought a plain dream, wire and water trading places and nothing breaking because both stayed true to their beds. Up at first gray, I walked with camera and ties. Dew cooled the leather. I shot each corner with a witness ruler, and the compass laid like a small cross. Every click wrote, I was here. It was as the paper says. By 9, confirmation emails perched in my inbox. Received, received, received. I printed screens because screens die and shoeboxes wait. The pages dried in a fan across the table. The room sounded like paper agreeing with itself. Before heading back outside, I wrote labels for each photograph. Corner, bearing, time, weather, witness. I signed the backs in small print the way a notary signs margins. Then I numbered the envelopes and logged them in a spiral pad. Line, date, purpose. Chain of custody for the truth sounds grand. It's mostly neat handwriting and stubborn habits. It keeps stories from drifting sideways. Toward noon, a truck idled near the road, then moved on. The sky gathered its thoughts into one long sentence. I tightened one last tie and pressed my palm to the corner brace. The wire answered in the pitch my father hunted with his thumbnail. For a moment I could hear him. Measure twice, then let them talk. I ate in the doorway bread, mustard, pickle, and watched Windfinger the pasture. Stories bend land for a while, the way heat bends air. Paper straightens both if you give it time. The first green card arrived with a signature slanted like a careless grin. I set it on the table and let the room go quiet, the way you let a seed think of rain. By evening, map copies lay flat, receipts nested, a new list written, recorder's office at 8, call Wichita at 9, photograph low spot after rain. I carved my father's initials into the corner brace, with the tip of my knife small, not boastful, just enough for the wood to remember. Somewhere beyond the hill, a glove box full of orange tape waited like a bad idea rehearsing. The boy in a man's boots would try a sentence again. He would bring friends and laughter that hopes to be a hammer. I was ready to measure their noise against the note. They didn't knock. They arrived with a rented skid steer, bright as a wasp. The bucket lifted like a dare. Orange steaks stuck out of a 5-gallon bucket in the truck bed, cheap confidence in a plastic pail. The wind carried cut grass sweetness, and under it, the hot metal smell of a machine that had never done a day's honest fencing. I didn't walk down to meet them. I stood on the porch long enough to take 3 photographs and a short breath. Then I moved with the calm of a man setting a table he set 100 nights in a row. Camera strap over the shoulder. Spiral notebook. Carpenter's pencil. The old survey folded to a quarter of its size and slid into my back pocket like a hymn book. The bucket pressed into my bottom wire and lifted until staples sang their warning. The note of strain changed thin to sharp, and I could feel the pitch in my teeth the way you feel a lie. Right there, Cody said to the kid running the machine. Push through. We're opening a lane. I measured distance with my boots, because the land trusts leather before it trusts voices. 22 paces from corner to low spot. 7 to the cottonwood stump. I had walked it in every season. Clover high, snow drifted, dust scoured. The monuments don't care for weather, and neither do I. I crouched at the capped rebar, brushed aside foxtail, photographed the stamp so the numbers could testify later without nerves. Morning, I said when the bucket paused to pant. You've got a camera? Good. Cameras remember better than a crowd. Cody wore sunglasses, though the sun was still soft. He had a fresh shave and last night's confidence. We're within our easement, he said, voice pitched for the kid and the boy filming on his phone. Already filed. Filed where? I asked, careful as a man stepping on ice. And by whom? The county, he said. What office? He didn't answer. You can hear when a sentence runs out of map. I turned my pen to the notebook. Date, time, weather, warm, south wind, persons present, C, ransom, mail, mid-32nd, 2 helpers, machine, yellow skid, steer, rental lot logo. Actions, attempted to remove fence, claimed family easement, no copy presented. I wrote slow so each letter had bones. Slow writing is a kind of hammer. The kid in the bucket raised it again. I said nothing. A man who has fenced long enough knows the difference between arguing and collecting. I walked the line with the camera low and steady, framed each tie with a witness ruler, and my compass laid so north was always north on paper. When the wire finally popped free at one staple, I bent, slid the tie into my pocket, and photographed the loose point with the skid. Steer's teeth in frame. Evidence is most persuasive when it refuses to perform. Sheriff's on his way? The phone boy asked. Recorder is, I said, which was truer, in a manner of speaking. I drove to town with the window down, and the fence's hum still traveling inside me. Raleigh and Tate smelled like lemon oil and a promise to use only necessary words. Nora looked at the photographs, one eyebrow rising in the quiet way that counts. We'll send a preservation letter first, she said, already typing. Notify them to retain all documents, messages, videos, spoliation warning, then a cease and desist on boundary interference, and a request for the alleged easement, including recording data. Her fingers rested. You still have your father's survey? Right here, I said, laying the creased paper out like bread. She drafted while I named corners and bearings. The letter stacked itself in tidy paragraphs. Legal description, monuments control, taxes current and paid by me. Permissive access over years never ripened into a hostile claim. Any further disturbance will be documented and remedied through the court. No thunder. Only rain. Certified return receipt, I said, and a copy to the renter if he tries to lease the ground he thinks he owns. I nodded. He'll try. People spend windfall money before they feel it. The post office received the letters like a forge takes rivet seat, seal, release. Each green card thumped my palm with a small oath. Outside, the courthouse flag snapped once, twice, like it was agreeing. I climbed the stairs to the recorder and asked for anything recorded in the last 6 months against my legal description. The clerk's smile was made of 30 years of paper. If it's there, she said, and the printer coughed out an answer that looked a lot like nothing. No easement, no lane, just the quiet of a ledger that won't be bullied. On the way out, I stopped at the surveyor's office. He wasn't in, but the front room held the smells I like. Dust-off rolled plats, pencil shavings, a coil tape warming in the sun. I wrote a note. Call me to rewalk any corner. Video and photos available. Bring chalk, I'll bring coffee. A real line is drawn with agreed steps. Back home, the machine had left its signature 2 ruts and a mistaken certainty. I retied the pop staple, not as surrender, but as respect for the land that had just been spoken to incorrectly. The wire took the twist and settled into the note my father taught me to hunt. The not too high pitch of something pulled to true without meanness. Evening lay in long gold pages. I set game cameras along the fence line, not to argue, but to remember. The lenses blinked once, brief as nods, and went black. Memory that doesn't blink is better than a witness with an anecdote. I ate a sandwich at the porch rail and let the day put the tools back in their places. My name was already moving, quietly, along counters where stamps wait. It would not outrun gossip, it would outlast it. That's how paper wins slow and exact, indifferent to the part of a story that makes men loud. At dark, clouds pooled in the west like ink poured and scared by hand. I stood at the corner brace and pressed my palm to the wood. It held my heat for a moment, then returned it. When I took my hand away, I imagined another palm there, years ago, tobacco and sweat, a thumbnail callous for plucking wire. Measure twice, my father said to the dark. Let them talk. I turned for the house when the first drop hit. Rain came in a straight testing line, and the wire answered with that river-deep song. Tomorrow I would open the county site, print fresh maps, and draw, in pencil, the path the letters would take from counter to counter, the way a man maps water moving through ditch gates. You don't command it. You set it right and let it prove the grade. Somewhere across the pasture, a young man rehearsed a new sentence into his phone. Somewhere in town, a clerk set my certified letters into bins labeled with quiet power, to be served. The night stitched both ends together with rain, and I slept like a man who knows the hook has set, whether the fish thrashes or not. By morning, the pasture had rinsed its temper, water-glassed the low spot. The cottonwood stump wore a dark halo. I walked with a camera, a tape, and the patience rain asks of fences. My boots took shallow sounds out of the mud. I set a folding ruler at the pop staple, photographed the splash marks where tires had entered and left. You can read a trespass in the shape of a puddle if you've been reading land long enough. On the porch, steam rose from my coffee like a quiet cattle drive. The email subject lines landed one by one. Received preservation notice. Cease and desist acknowledged. No easement of record for parcel legal desk. Recorder confirms. No filings affecting boundary. I printed everything on paper that takes ink without bleeding and set them on the table to breathe. Then I wrote with the carpenter's pencil. Chain of proof, day 1, Nora called. They posted a video, she said. Her voice had the cool of a level bubble. Let me guess, I said. Orange tape and bravado. And a caption about taking back what's ours. Leave it up. We've already preserved it. If they edit, we'll have both versions. I thanked her. Politeness is armor that doesn't clank. At 10, I drove to the county for certified copies of the last 10 years' tax payments. The clerk stamped each page with a sound like a knuckle on a door you're allowed to open. Paid, paid, paid. I slid the stack into a manila envelope, wrote taxes, continuity across the tab, and felt something settle inside me the way gravel settles in a post hole when you tamp it right. A call came from Wichita. The servicer's voice was pleasant and far away. I asked professional questions with country patience. Is the ransom residence note currently held by you? Is it performing? Would the holder entertain assignment? Silence is a negotiator if you leave space for it. She said she would note my interest. Notes are seeds if you know where the rain falls. At noon, I saw fresh tracks again at the East Gate boots. 2 sets, then none. The game camera would tell me why later, but I didn't hurry to look. I tightened a brace wire until it sang at the pitch I reserved for court days. Then I walked to the monument and touched the stamped cap with 2 fingers. Metal has a way of reminding you what the word record means. By 3, the first green card came back signature slanted like a man signing while saying something witty to a phone. I set it in the top left of the table service complete and wrote the date. Beneath it, I taped a still frame from their video. Skid steer tooth against my wire, my compass laid in the bottom of the photo like a witness with no appetite for applause. The room felt orderly in the way a tool chest feels right when every wrench is nested where reach expects it. A neighbor, Mrs. Halley, drove up slow and cut her engine the way you end a conversation you plan to resume. She handed me a pie, then a photograph from her kitchen window, a long shot of the machine dodging the corner monument. "Just in case," she said. "This town's forgot itself before and remembered in time." "Thank you," I said. "If anyone asks, I never asked." "You never do," she said, and drove away with a nod that counted as prayer. At dusk, I finally checked the game cameras. The first clip was only rain. The second held Cody and the phone boy standing at the low spot, hands on hips, talking at each other like mirrors. The third, from an angle I liked best, showed the skid steer easing forward, then stopping at a hollered word. They stared at the capped rebar. The phone boy zoomed. The frame caught the stamp letters bright with water. In the recorded quiet, Cody said something I've heard men say when the ground under their feet refuses to flatter them. "We'll come back with paperwork." Oh, good, I thought. Come back with paper. Paper and I speak the same language. I printed stills, labeled them, and slid them into page protectors' small raincoats for facts. I built a timeline along the edge of the table. First conversation, attempted removal, letters sent, receipts logged, recorder's confirmation, neighbor's photo, game cam stills. Timelines make panic look silly. The phone buzzed. A different neighbor this time, voice cautious. He told folks at the feed store he has an easement in principle. "In principle," I said, writing the phrase down because it would be useful later. "Principals don't record at the courthouse." We both let the line enjoy that sentence. When he hung up, I added a column for hearsay not evidence, but direction, and wrote only what could be pinned to a who, a where, a when. I drove out once more before dark. The sky had cleaned itself to iron blue. I set a small, bright flag at each monument, a surveyor's courtesy to anyone who might be tempted to confuse enthusiasm with authority. Then I repaired the one loosened tie, the way a man straightens his collar before walking into a room that respects rules. As I worked, I considered the next steps. Boundary affidavit, under oath, recorded. Request for temporary restraining order if their bucket returned before the clerk's ink dried. An invitation to a line walking with a licensed surveyor and 2 disinterested neighbors. The law likes daylight. I have never minded walking in daylight. Back inside, I wrote an affidavit draft with the plain facts a judge can balance in his hand without feeling tricked. I swore to continuous maintenance, taxes, the dates of permissive access I allowed, after funerals and floods. I attached photographs with captions that would make sense to a stranger at a desk. Knee Corner Monument, cap number 7132, 7:18 a.m., rain still falling, compass north verified. When I finished, I slid everything back into the shoebox and tied it with fresh twine. The box had the weight of a small engine or a big idea. Sleep came quick. When I woke just before midnight, the wind had switched to north. Cooler air moved the curtains. The fence hummed a different, lower note winter's key, my father called it. I stood barefoot at the window and listened the way you listen. For a truck you know by sound. Tomorrow the preservation letter would meet their video in the mailbox. The cease and desist would sit on a kitchen counter under a ring left by a coffee cup. My affidavit would meet a notary's seal. And a stranger with a scanner would lift the whole day into the county's memory, where stories are welcome but only as exhibits. If Cody wanted to talk, he could bring a lawyer and a map. I had both. Out past the cottonwood stump, the creek forgot the day like creeks do by keeping on. The wire held its line and sang once when the wind freshened, a note clear enough that any man with ears could tell which side of it he stood on. The next move, like most that matter, would land on paper first. The sound reaches me before the dust does a diesel hum in the far field. A swather shaves a bright stripe across what Cody now calls our hay. A rake lifts windrows. The baler coughs money-colored cylinders. Lease equipment moves with the confidence of people who assume someone else already read the paper. My phone chimes, invoice shared irrigation assessment. Pro rata, as agreed. The blank where agreement should live is the loudest line. I take 3 photographs from the porch, compass in frame, then lace my boots. Hinges say what they always say on decisive mornings. Do it clean. At the fence, the wire holds its note. Fresh tire ruts cross the ditch where my line turns east. I set a folding ruler in a rut and photograph tread blocks. Then bag a tuft of chaff. Evidence is patience with a camera. The swather operator kills his engine when I point to the edge. Morning, I say. Whose contract? Ransom, he says. Cash hay, his ground. Name on the lease? Friend of his. I just cut. You Danner? I am. Not here to make your day worse, only to make mine correct. I photograph plates and decals, then call Nora. They're harvesting. No recorded lease. I've got photos, times, and a man who thinks Cody's word notarizes itself. Notices go out, she says. Cease operations. Preserve proceeds. Produce any contract. Hold crop subject to the record owner. I'll file a boundary affidavit and seek a temporary restraining order. Judge Harrell's on duty. Keep the adjectives out. They never get in. My table becomes a small county. Photos, certified slips, affidavit draft. I label each still so a stranger can swear to scale. N89 degree 56 2010E, 10:03 a.m., windrow within 1.2 feet of boundary. I slide everything into the leather portfolio my father carried to closings. At the courthouse, Nora meets me with a folder that already has weight. Exhibits AH, tax receipts, prior survey, recorder search, certified letters, game cam stills, today's photos, boundary sketch, clerk's confirmation of no easement. A notary witnesses what paper already swore to. We file, then walk the motion to the judge. Harold's office is spare. Nora presents like a weather report calm fronts, clear maps. She asks for an order to prohibit interference, preserve harvested crop, and bar entry, without the record owner's written permission or the court's. He reads, signs, and the ink makes a small river across the bottom. Deputy Klein posts the order at my gate with tape that might as well be iron. The baler idles at the edge like a boy called to the porch. The operator parks on the county road and waits for the owner of the hay. Klein's thumb points at me without leaving the page. That thumb weighs more than the baler. I tighten a brace wire until the pitch returns to the note my father trusted. Across the ditch, Cody's truck idles, then rolls away. Dust hides retreat, not direction. Back on the porch, I send short letters co-op to hold any check for hay from my parcel. Irrigation district to correct the invoice. Renter to receive the order. Green cards stack. I write the date like a man carving winter into wood. Neighbors report the feed store weather. Cody will get paper and come back. Good. Paper is welcome here. At dark, I set game cameras along the fence line not to argue, to remember and press my palm to the corner brace. Measure twice. My father says from somewhere the wire understands. Let them talk. Morning comes clean. Dew crowns each bale. I map the cut by hand with north arrow. Scale, legend, then write. Crop preserved by court order. Proceeds held pending determination. Order served. Nora says on the phone. Affidavit recorded. Want to go further? Further. We notice a quiet title action as contingency. I ask the co-op to hold proceeds pending proof of title. The bank manager mentions a small mechanic's judgment against Cody truck repairs. No payments. The shop owner is tired. Tired sells, I say. The shop smells like belt dressing. Reyes slides the judgment across the counter like a tool. We write it clean. Assignment for small consideration. Notarized. The folder weighs less than talk and more than rumor. I add it to the shoebox the way a socket returns to its drawer. The irrigation clerk confirms I'm the sole account holder on that lateral. No shared agreement exists. She pins my order and affidavit to the file. Around noon, Cody cruises the county road with his window down like an argument. Dust lifts, considers itself, and falls. I photograph the truck for sequence. Timelines starve rumors. Evening, bright flags at each bale stack. A laminated copy of the order at the gate. Nora emails the recorded boundary affidavit stamped, permanent. I print 2 copies and label a fresh folder. Boundary affidavit recorded. Tomorrow's list. Record judgment assignment, speak to title, call servicer, schedule a chalk line, walk with a surveyor, and 2 disinterested neighbors. At gray light, I record the assignment. The title clerk reads my affidavit, initials her log, and says, anyone searching will see this. In Wichita, the servicer flags my interest in Cody's mortgage if it ever comes to market. Flags keep people honest at corners. By afternoon, the surveyor meets me at the any corner with tripod and chalk. 2 older neighbors come because a town tunes itself with eyes that remember. Deputy Klein attends for peace. We walk the bearings like catechism. Call, measure, mark. The chalk lies bright as a road you cannot drive. The surveyor taps the capped rebar. There, he says. Cody watches from the road, sunglasses on, hands clenched around a map that won't match the ground. He doesn't speak. chalk and neighbors speak enough. I shake hands and write each witness name in my spiral, the cleanest kind of receipt. Back at the porch, I call the co-op again, then the broker they sometimes sell through. Hold proceeds. Copies of the order and affidavit follow like steady rain. That night, I review the game camera clips. Rain. Then Cody and the foam boy at the low spot, hands on hips. Then the skid steer easing forward, stopping at a hollered word as the lens finds the cap letters bright with water. In the quiet, Cody says the line men use when ground refuses to flatter them. We'll come back with paperwork. Good. Paper and I speak the same language. I print stills, label them with time, weather, witness, and slide them into page protectors' raincoats for facts. The timeline along the table's edge lengthens. First conversation, attempted removal, letters, receipts, recorder confirmation, neighbor's photo, game cam stills, tro, flags, chalk walk. Panic looks small sitting next to sequence. Morning, the sheriff calls. No trouble, Klein says. They're posting about next steps. If the internet learns to read legal descriptions, I'll retire. We'll give it pictures with captions, I say. I draft a short affidavit, continuous maintenance, taxes, dates of permissive access, and attach photographs with captions a stranger can balance in a hand without feeling tricked. At noon, I file what should be filed, pick up what should be picked up, and nod to the clerk who's known me since my last name was followed by son of. From the road crest, I look down at the bales sitting obedient inside the flags, their value preserved by a paragraph. The order at the gate flutters once, then settles. In the late light, I tighten 2 ties and carve my father's initials small into the corner brace. Not for boasting, for remembering. The creek speaks in slow syllables. Bats make commas. Somewhere in town, Cody gathers paper and principal. Principals don't record at the courthouse. Paper does. My name is already present where names belong: index, affidavit, receipt, assignment. The day clicks into place the way a well-set gate finds its latch on the first try. One more line in the spiral. Tro posted, equipment stood down, crop preserved, judgment assigned, chalk walked, title alerted. Beneath it, smaller and only for me. Tomorrow, ask the bank about the note. The next move, like most that matter, will land on paper first. By the time anyone notices, the ground will already have adjusted to the weight of my name. Before sundown, I email the co-op manager and attach the stamped order, the affidavit index, and a cover note. Proceeds from haycut on parcel legal description must be held pending final determination. Any attempt to negotiate without my written authorization risks conversion. His reply: we will hold the kind of sentence that steadies a man more than bravado. I forward the same packet to the irrigation district, so invoices stop wandering toward my inbox with other people's claims folded inside them. On the chalk walk, the surveyor talks as he works. How monuments control over fence, how bearings forgive slight drift, how memory serves stories while steel serves the court. His chalk leaves arithmetic across grass heads, and 2 neighbors nod with numbers like men counting prayer. The first thing to unravel isn't a contract, it's a tone. At the co-op, men who used to greet Cody with loud palms now wave from a measured distance. In the feed aisle, the manager folds a receipt and says, we're holding proceeds per the order, loud enough that the aisles can hear, and quietly enough that pride can pretend it didn't. Out on the county road, the renter's equipment leaves ruts like sentences cut short. The bales sit inside my bright flags like obedient animals that refuse to load for anyone but the name on the paperwork. On Sunday, I stand at the back of a church I don't attend, the way some people stand under a porch eve to judge the rain. After the service, a neighbor whose handshake has always been honest says, you did it fair. The choir hums around us, the coffee tastes like tin, and the hymnals smell of old glue. You don't need a parade when the map finally matches the ground. A nod is ceremony enough. By Monday, the baler is gone, and the shared irrigation assessment, Noah's flood of an invoice, quietly evaporates. The district clerk pins my court order to the inside of a gray file cabinet and says, if anyone calls with questions, we'll read this like scripture. That word scripture means we will not argue, we will point. I keep to my habits. Walk the line. Photograph the monuments after rain. Stack the green cards, those little postal confessions, so the dates line up like fence staples, top, middle, bottom, true. In the evenings, I sit on the porch and listen for the wire's note. It's there, steady as a rib. Somewhere in town, Cody tells a story about next steps. Stories have their uses. Paper keeps books. Midweek, the Wichita servicer calls. The voice is polite and far away, like a train you can hear but not see. We noted your interest, she says. At the moment, his loan is technically performing but thin. If we were to sell, it would be through special assets, not servicing. Would you like to be listed as a potential purchaser? List me, I say. Show me what Rain does when it can choose its creek. Acquisition would require proof of funds and an entity, she says. Of course, I say, already picturing the shoebox in a folder that doesn't exist yet but soon will. That afternoon, I drive to the bank where the carpet always smells faintly of pencil sharpenings. I open a simple LLC with a name that keeps a private smile on my face. True Line Holdings. The officer offers a handshake that has approved 1,000 mortgages and refused 100 without raising its voice. Purpose? He asks. Pen ready. Acquiring notes? I say, I like tools that move weight without moving much. He doesn't blink. Good bankers don't. He types while I slide copies of the court order and affidavit toward him. You're precise, he says. Habit, I say, and need. I take the new binder home charcoal cover, brass rings that click like small gates, and set it beside the shoebox. In my notebook I write, TLH formed, bank account funded. Awaiting tape. Tape, in that world, means a spreadsheet of loans someone else is tired of defending. The co-op manager calls about the preserved bales. We can auction inside the order's terms, he says. Proceeds held pending final determination. You set the floor, I'll set the rules. Low drama, high clarity, I say. A farmer should be able to read it and nod. He laughs, that quiet country laugh that says a pipe won't freeze tonight. Paper with a pulse, he says. We'll do it right. At the feed store, 2 young men load mineral and talk loudly about principles. I buy nails and leave them to learn the difference between principles and records. Outside, Mrs. Hallie leans out her truck window and says, he's not welcome to cut through our pasture anymore, as if she's telling me the forecast so I can make hay. I tip my hat. Social weather is a system too. 2 days later, a man in a suit that costs more than my truck drives into my life with a stack of files that could be a stair or a gallows. He is not from here. He smells faintly of hotel. Special assets, he says, handing me a card. We're pruning. Here's the portfolio. Yours is in there. At my kitchen table, the county's smallest annex, we go through the list. He says phrases like non-core and offload and discount to par. I say phrases like chain of assignment and clear collateral file. We agree, without saying it, that neither of us enjoys adjectives. When we reach the file with Cody's name, the suit taps a page. Current, but he's strained. Tight debt to income. Taxes on the homestead are a month overdue. His payment history reads like a man driving on a spare possible, not recommended. The file smells of copier heat and a kind of fatigue that money recognizes. There are photographs. Porch with a sag in the middle. 3 trucks, none of them quite paid for. A yard where confidence parks and the neighbors look away from their windows. There is a note stamped with an interest rate a little too proud of itself, and a deed of trust recorded on a date I remember for other reasons. Price? I ask. He quotes a number. I don't blink. Good buyers don't. Subject to clean collateral and no surprises, I say. He slides a checklist across the table like a clerk's blessing. We'll do the dance, he says. You've done it before. I've watched it, I say. Watching is practice, if you're honest. Due diligence is a polite rummage. I read the note, the deed of trust, the title policy, the assignments. I check the county tax ledger and see the whisper of delinquency that turns into a shout if you don't greet it. I walk past the house twice in one day in a truck that doesn't announce itself. Porchboard sigh. The dog knows more than it tells. A television lit the front room at noon, which often means a schedule unhitched from employment. Back home, I sharpen a pencil and write the bid on an index card, a number that makes a banker nod and a debtor curse. True Line Holdings submits it with proof of funds and a short cover letter that has no sway except its straightness. Days pass. The fence hums. The creek drills its low vowel into August. The chalk line the surveyor left is fading, but the memory of it isn't. The suit calls on a Thursday. You have the tape, he says. And the deal if you move like a man who knows the season. I move. Wire transfers are just fences for money. By noon Friday, the assignment of deed of trust and the alongs to the note are scanned, sent, countersigned. At 2, I am in the recorder's office watching the clerk stamp the assignment with a sound that convinced me of authority when I was 12. Thud, date, book, page. She slides the original back to me through the slot. You own the paper that owns the house, she says, not unkindly. I step into the heat and let it stand me up. The sun makes the courthouse bricks sweat. On the steps, I hold the document like a steering wheel and imagine the little gears inside town shifting. Ownership is sometimes the right to decide what a day feels like for another man. That knowledge is heavy. It should be. Back at the table, I create a new stack, loan ransom. On top, notice of assignment. Beneath it, hello, goodbye letter, goodbye from the bank, hello from True Line Holdings, request for proof of insurance, notice of default not yet sent, drafted like winter wood stacked under an awning. No adjectives, dates and amounts that could be set on a scale. I do not enjoy humiliation. I enjoy alignment. The first letter is gentle. It announces what the recorder already knows. Payments now to this address. Questions to this number. Bring taxes current. We'll talk. The second letter, certified, addresses insurance and taxes. It offers a reasonable window to cure. The third is a draft you keep in a folder where hopeful men keep seed packets ready if rain fails. On the porch, under evening light, I sign with the name that has become a tool. True Line Holdings by Caleb Danner, managing member. The words look like a fence corner that will not rack. I stack the letters, slip in photographs of the deed of trust's first page and the assignment, and seal the envelopes. Paper leaves like birds. You have to trust their homing. The sheriff texts not about trouble, just to say he saw Cody at the feed store holding forth. Told them the bank's on his side, the deputy writes. I respond with a photograph of the recorded assignment. Book, page, date, my entity. He replies with a single dot. That dot is country for copy received. When the certified mail lands, you can feel the tremor from across town. Social earth moves in small cracks first. A cousin who stops liking a post. A friend who forgets to return a socket set. An invitation that gets lost in a pocket. Cody's girlfriend in a grocery aisle, where the produce mists like a polite rain, stares at me as if I renamed the months. I nod and push my cart. A man should not explain to produce. Taxes come due on his homestead. He pays them, but late enough to earn a fee that tastes like a penny held too long under the tongue. He sends the regular mortgage payment to the bank out of habit. The bank returns it with a nice letter. We don't own your loan anymore. Please remit to the party identified in the enclosed assignment. He brings that letter to the feed store and tries to make it say anything but what it says. Paper has a stubborn accent when it announces the same fact twice. He calls my number and hangs up 3 times. On the 4th, he stays. What are you doing? He asks. Voice tight with the kind of anger that comes from the shock of gravity. Administering a loan I own, I say, you'll find the instructions in the letter. Bring the taxes current, provide proof of insurance, and keep your payment schedule. We can discuss a brief interest. Only period if your cash flow is thin. You can't do this, he says. Your family. That word has versions, I say. The one you used at the fence meant I owed you my boundary. The one I use means I will not lie about where the corners sit. He hangs up. People hang up when the map in their head doesn't match the ground under their boots. I make a note. Spoke with borrower. Offered standard cure path. No acceptance. The shoebox doesn't judge. It just receives. At the co-op auction, the flags I set become the rules other men follow. The auctioneer reads my cover terms the way a good man reads law, with a voice that only rises on numbers. The bales bring decent money, better than pride predicted. The manager writes a check, seals it in an envelope, and writes across the flap, held per order. We shake hands without smiling too much. Satisfaction should not be loud. It should be accurate. A week later, the special assets man emails the final closing binder. Scanned allonge, collateral certification, a list of servicing addresses updated to True Line Holdings. I print it, hole punch it, and snap the ring shut. That sound has become, for me, the modern version of setting a post with gravel. Permanent without boasting. I take a drive down Cody's street. Slow, legal, invisible. He's in the yard, sleeves rolled, jaw set. A man who has recently learned the word assignee stands differently. He scans the world for loopholes. Holes close when you did the paper right. He looks up, sees my truck, and stares the way a dog watches a gate and knows it cannot jump. I lift 2 fingers from the wheel in the old salute. He doesn't lift his. That's all right. Some waves aren't performed with hands. That night, under a sky the color of old nickels, I draft what must come next if the simple cure doesn't happen. Notice of default and intent to accelerate, a letter whose heartbeat is a schedule. 30 days to cure late payments, late fees, insurance proof, and taxes. Failure to do so will result in acceleration and foreclosure according to statute. All rights reserved. The law gives you a script because ad-libbing is how fights get loud and sloppy. I keep the script. I keep my voice. Before sealing the draft into its tidy sleep, I walk the fence by starlight. Wire picks up night like an instrument tuned to weather. The creek makes its old, patient sound against rock older than anyone's surname. At the corner brace, I lay my palm where my father laid his, and I let absence be a kind of attendance. True is true. I hear, not from the sky, but from the habit, even if nobody looks. I am not out to ruin a man. I am out to correct a line. But lines have consequences. When you move a fence back to where the monuments say, you move everything that leaned against the lie. Swagger, stories, a porch that held too much noise. The town feels the shift, and shifts with it. On Monday, the last polite letter goes out with the little green card writing shotgun. I stand at the counter while the clerk stamps it thud, date, destination, and I look through the window at a town that still remembers how to be small in the useful ways. Nods, receipts, names called softly but correctly. If cure comes, good. If not, steps follow steps, just as bearings follow corners. On the porch that evening, a moth beats quietly against the screen and then finds its line to the dark. The fence hums a note I can count to. The shoebox rests under the table, heavy with the kind of authority no one needs to fear if they aren't trying to make a story bully a map. Somewhere across town, at a kitchen table, under a light that makes everything look more tired, a man reads a letter that says exactly what it means. And if he doesn't answer it with the right numbers by the date it offers, the next letter will not arrive from a bank he can flatter, but from me, and it will be written in a hand that never needs to raise its voice to be obeyed. The paper went up first. Deputy Klein pressed blue tape until the wood drank it flat. The seal bled in the cold. The notice held square on Cody's door like a truth finally standing public. I waited at the bottom step with Nora and a folder whose brass clip knew my rhythm. She handed me a copy. True Line Holdings at the header. My name beneath small, exact, untrembling. A writ doesn't shout, it points. 30 days had passed since the cure window closed. Taxes late, insurance vague, payments stalled. The note accelerated with a gate's quiet certainty. At the sale, no one outbid a credit bid that matched the debt in silence. The deed recorded. The clerk's stamp made the thud that tells a boy he grew up right. The house didn't move. The paper did. Cody arrived fast, gravel hissing. He climbed the steps, read the line that ends certain stories. Possession shall be returned to the owner named herein. You wrote this, he said. I signed it, I said. The court wrote it. You can't evict me. I can ask a deputy to carry out a judge's order. I kept my voice the temperature of paper. Nora offered the envelope we'd brought. Cash for keys, she said. 2 weeks and a number that pays the truck that won't start. Locks changed after you're gone. Take what's yours, leave what isn't. He looked into a room where a television glowed at noon and a dog nested in blankets. You stole it, he said. I bought a debt, I said. I tended it like fence. You were invited to tend it too. He laughed without joy. You and your monuments. We could have walked the line, I said. You drove through it. Klein rested a palm on the post as if testing grain. You've got until noon next Friday, he said. We'll check then. Nora gave dates, receipts, and the small courtesies that make hard paper easier to pick up. Call if you want to move her, she said. We left the porch with the careful steps you use when a house is listening. The week unfolded like a measured tape. Monday, boxes in the window. Wednesday, a pickup sagging under a couch. Thursday, a woman carrying a framed photograph. The dog rode in the front seat, tongue high with confusion and loyalty. I noted, keys likely Friday. Bring receipt. I slept well. When you choose a script and keep to it, night respects you. My father's voice stayed near the door of my sleep. True is true, even if nobody looks. I woke before daylight, brewed dark coffee, and listened to the fence hum the pitch it uses when summer rehearses fall. Friday came patient. I walked the creek, set my hand on the corner brace, felt the wood return my heat. You're just a placeholder, he'd said months ago. The word lands right now. We are all placeholders until paper and habit give us shape. At 10, Nora rolled into my drive with the look that makes clerks cap their pens. We drove in silence. Klein was already there. Morning, he said. I like days that keep promises. The porch was bare. Blinds held a new angle. Cody stood in the doorway, thinner than pride allows, holding a manila envelope like it might bleed. His eyes were bloodshot but clear. For the record, he said, giving the envelope to Nora, I still think you don't deserve it. For the record, I said, you told me I didn't. The record says different. The dog's with her sister, he said. Trash is Tuesday. The mower's my brother's. Nora counted keys softly 2 doors. One mailbox, the brass gate I'd replaced last spring. She wrote a receipt and let him watch each number appear. When she finished, she offered the paper. This says you did a hard thing correctly. He didn't take it. You done? He asked. Almost, I said. Walk the house. He stepped aside. The living room smelled of cardboard and lemon cleaner. Sun went dull on carpet. A nail stood proud where a television had preached afternoons into evenings. The kitchen drawer held 3 screws, a menu, a tape measure with no hook, bedroom square and unromantic, a closet with 2 wire hangers and silence. In the back room facing the cottonwood, a blind's wand was missing. Through the slats, I could see the corner of my pasture and the chalk-lined memory rain couldn't kill. I touched the glass and felt the house breathe. We ended at the door. Klein signed the inventory. Nora countersigned. I wrote my name the way a man writes a boundary firm, legible, no flourish. You can lock it, he said from the shade. I will, I said. But you do it this time. He set the latch, turned the deadbolt, then pressed the single remaining key into Nora's hand. For a heartbeat skin touched skin, and the porch drew a small circle where law and loss stood equal. Take care, I said. He nodded once and walked to his truck without looking back. We stood until the engine faded and the street exhaled. Then we turned to the door. The new lock took the key like a truth, taking its place. Inside, rooms echoed the way a field echoes after hay, useful, honest, waiting. On the way home, the wind shifted north. Wire carries that change into the palm. I thought of winter chores post to refusal, oil for hinges, a name touched into a brace not to brag, only to persist. The day ended the way a clean line ends, not with celebration but with a restful click. Tomorrow I'll go early with a bucket of staples and the patience for true, and begin the work that looks like nothing until you step back and see the pasture hold. Season 6 will ask for quiet, not victory, and I've been practicing quiet my whole life. And the wire will remember us by the note we kept out here. The house was quiet after the keys changed hands. The kind of quiet you hear in a barn the day after you stack the last bale, useful, patient, a little hollow until purpose moves back in. I walked through with a carpenter's pencil and blue tape. A hinge needed oil. A sill wanted sanding. In the back room, the blinds dragged. I wrote wand missing and felt foolishly tender about a piece of plastic, as if respect begins with small, correct things. Nora filed the last paper that afternoon. The order confirming title, the clerk's stamp laying its heavy, ceremonial sound across ink already true. She set the certified copy on my table. You've reached the part of the story where the verbs get smaller, she said. Mend, paint, post, the good verbs. I nodded. Big verbs evict, foreclose aren't victories to savor. The older I get, the more I prefer verbs with calluses. I fixed what was mine to fix, and nothing else. A neighbor's boy hauled away what the thrift wouldn't take. We set a new mailbox, and I turned the screw until the metal lay flush, and decided that was enough. At dusk, I carried a milk crate of old magazines to the truck. On top, a county fair program with my father's name on a raffle ticket. Decades late to win. I held it a beat longer than it deserved and then let it go in the can. We keep some things by releasing them. I let the house breathe a week. Then I swept the porch and hung a small sign inside the front window where only a person standing close could read it. Available to people who read things. I wanted a tenant who liked rules the way I like a line level. Something that keeps the day from tilting. A young couple came with a baby and a binder thicker than my patience. They had references that answered on the first ring and a habit of reading aloud before signing. The lease said what leases should say dates, dollars, boundaries, and nothing it shouldn't. When we finished, the woman asked about the creek. It talks most nights, I said, mostly in a low key. She smiled like a person who sleeps with windows open. We'll get along. I considered lowering the rent out of some urge to soften the rough edge of the story. But pity is a poor carpenter, its corners never meet right. I priced it fair. They paid on time. They mowed without making art of the rows. The neighborhood exhaled. Across the road, the bales we preserved at auction had turned into a check, with 3 signatures and no drama. The co-op manager set it on my table. Held per order, he said, tapping the flap as if reminding himself how to behave. I applied it as the court directed and breathed the clean air of arithmetic done. The town adjusted the way towns do, not by announcement, but by temperature. At the feed store, people greeted with the old nods. A man who'd lent Cody a welder came in on a Tuesday, asked if anyone had heard from him, then bought oil and left without mentioning his welder again. Pride has a budget too. From time to time, I saw Cody on the edge of things at a distant pump where small talk doesn't cross. at a four-way stop where you can pretend to study the cross traffic. He looked thinner, then stronger, then like a man who had learned a new word and wasn't sure whether to say it aloud. I didn't avoid him. I didn't invite him. We gave each other the kind of silence that costs less every month. The bank in Wichita sent me a final binder on the loan, tidy and complete. I shelved it between boundary affidavit recorded and a worn 3-ring labeled taxes in my father's handwriting. That shelf will outlive me. I liked feeling replaced by something sturdy. A cold front came with its clean broom. Wire tightens and cold. You hear the pitch climb a hair and know winter has found the fence. I walked the line with a bucket of staples, checking each tie with my right hand glove and the bare palm of my left because truth should be felt directly once in a while. A pheasant lifted from the ditch at my steps and scolded me for rights I legally own and morally share. We made our peace as we always do by both continuing. Nora stopped by with a pie she swore wasn't payment for anything. We ate slices on the tailgate and watched the creek wear its low November face. "You think he understood?" she asked. "Understanding isn't a deed," I said. "He signed where he signed. The rest is weather." She squinted toward the cottonwood stump. "You didn't set out to break him." "I set out to tune the wire," I said. "If a man leans on a fence that isn't his, he might fall when you set it true. That's not the fence's meanness." She nodded, and we let the creek do a little talking for us. The tenant's baby learned to sleep through the train 3 towns over. On Saturdays, the young father borrowed my ladder and returned it with the hinges wiped. The mother left a thank you note, 7 words, that had more grammar than most apologies. Out here, gratitude is a quiet weather pattern. It keeps crops we can't see alive. Deputy Klein waved from his cruiser whenever he passed, an old scout who likes seeing check marks on a list he didn't have to write. He stopped one evening and leaned on the rail. "Feed stores calmer," he said. "Less subject, more verbs." "Good verbs," I said, and we stood until the porch light agreed it was time. On the first real freeze, I built a small fire in the burn barrel and fed it trimmings the tape measure without a hook. The unusable drawer liner, a brittle blind slat I had kept simply to decide to keep it. The flames took each thing without judgment. I warmed my hands and thought about the habit that brought me here. Copy, label, walk, file, tighten, ask in writing, speak rarely and exactly. The world assumes revenge is heat. I have found it to be precision. I don't pray like my mother did, with words and a gaze you couldn't interrupt. I pray like my father, with the work. On a windless morning, I carried a new cedar post and set it at the corner where the brace once sagged. I tamped gravel in lifts, slow, careful 2 inches, tamp, 2 inches, tamp until refusal felt like endorsement. I cut the notch for the diagonal wire, seated it, twisted until the brace sang that thin, satisfied note. Then I took my pocket knife and carved initials in the posts first, mine after, small enough to be hidden by a lichen if the years were kind. It wasn't to claim, it was to witness. I thought of calling Cody to walk the line with me one last time, not to lecture, just to point at the capped rebar and say, "Here." But there's a difference between an invitation and a reckoning. Some lessons the land gives on its own schedule. I left the idea alone. Leaving things alone is one of the tools I carry more now. The shoebox went back to its shelf, heavy with stamps and dates that don't need me to defend them. The binder for Trueline Holdings sat beside it, my name small on the spine, big enough for a clerk to find if they had to. I dusted both with my sleeve and felt foolish for the gesture, then forgiven. We tend the objects that tended us. Snow came once, then properly. The tenant's baby saw flakes for the first time and smacked the window with a palm too clean for what the world will ask of it. I shoveled the walk because it was my walk, even if someone else's lease said otherwise. The husband waved, then went inside to lift a child who shrieked at cold glass and names he'd forgotten to learn. Good verbs: lift, warm, hush. On the day Nora handed me the final invoice, the one no one argues with, I drove to the cemetery and stood a while at my parents' stone. The granite had taken winter without complaint. I brushed off needles and read the names like paragraphs that end without period or apology. Kept it true, I said, best I could. The wind touched my ears and then stopped. That felt like an answer. I drove home by the long road, the one that shows you your land from 3 angles, and still finds a way to surprise you with its accuracy. I parked, walked out to the corner brace, and didn't do a single thing. Just stood with my palm against cedar and my eyes on a hawk making its old, slow circle. The fence hummed the pitch I wanted. The creek said the same sentence it always says in winter. A man can ask for more than that. He shouldn't. People will tell this story however it suits them. In some versions, I'm patient. In others, cruel. It doesn't bother me. Paper will be here when their lunch breaks end. The wire will be singing when their phones die. The land will remember clean hands and correct angles longer than it remembers voices. I turned for the house at last, boots marking a line I'd walked in all weather. The door took the key. The hinge made no sound. Inside, on the table, a pencil waited point up, as if ready to write nothing important and everything necessary.